The chamber was silent except for the soft hum of translation devices. Delegates from 47 species sat in the grand circle of the Galactic Council, their eyes fixed on the crystalline sphere floating in the center of the room. Inside the sphere, 3 figures made of pure light shifted and moved like flames in a gentle wind. The seers of Valadon had not appeared before the council in 300 years. When they came, it meant something terrible was approaching. "Speak your vision," Chancellor Mivon said. His voice was steady, but his 4 hands trembled slightly against the armrests of his chair. The seers had never been wrong, not once in 10,000 years of recorded history. The largest of the 3 figures pulsed with bright white light. When it spoke, the words came directly into the minds of everyone present. "We have seen the future paths converging. A race of fire comes from the outer darkness. They walk through flames as others walk through water. War follows in their shadow. Blood will fall like rain across 1,000 worlds." The chamber erupted in panic. Delegates shouted questions in dozens of languages. The translation devices struggled to keep up. Admiral Kresh of the Valorian Empire stood, his scales gleaming red under the chamber lights. "Where do they come from? How long do we have?" The second seer spoke, its voice like wind through hollow caves. "They are already here. They watch from the edges. They prepare in silence. When they move, it will be swift." "How do we stop them?" Chancellor Mivon asked. The third seer, the smallest, flickered like a dying candle. "The oracle predicted a race of fire. Through fire, humanity walked back into the war." Then the sphere went dark. The seers were gone. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Admiral Kresh spoke the word that was on everyone's mind. "Humanity?" Far from the council chambers, on the outer edge of known space, Captain Elena Vasquez was having a very boring day. Her ship, the UHSV Magellan, was 3 weeks into a mineral survey mission. The work was simple, safe, and exactly what humanity needed. No conflicts, no complications, just honest work among the distant stars. Elena sat in her command chair, reviewing the day's scan results on her datapad. Her crew of 23 worked quietly at their stations. Most of them were young, born after the war that their parents and grandparents tried so hard to forget. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange," Lieutenant Park called from the sensor station. "Multiple gravity signatures about 2 light hours from our position." Elena looked up. "How many?" "At least 200 ships, ma'am. Maybe more. They're holding position in a defensive formation." Elena felt a cold finger trace down her spine. 200 ships was a fleet, a big one, and there was nothing out here worth defending with that kind of force. Nothing except human colonies. "Can you identify them?" she asked. Park worked his controls for a moment. "They're broadcasting council identification codes. Looks like at least a dozen different species. This is a combined fleet, Captain." Elena stood and walked to the sensor station. She looked at the display, reading the information herself. Park was right. This was a major military operation. And it was sitting right on humanity's doorstep. "Open a channel," she ordered. "Let's find out what's going on." The reply came faster than she expected. A Valorian officer appeared on the main screen, his scales the deep crimson of a high-ranking commander. "Human vessel, you are ordered to power down your engines and prepare for inspection." Elena kept her voice calm and professional. "This is Captain Vasquez of the United Human Survey Vessel Magellan. We're on a registered mineral survey mission. May I ask why Council forces are in this sector?" "That information is classified," the Valorian said. "Power down your engines now." Elena looked at her crew. They were all staring at the screen, confused and worried. Humanity had stayed out of galactic politics for 3 generations. They paid their council fees, filed their flight plans, and kept to themselves. Why would a council fleet treat them like enemies? "We'll comply," Elena said slowly, but I'm requesting clarification on council authority in this region. These are internationally recognized survey grounds. The Valorian's expression was hard to read, but Elena thought she saw something like fear in his eyes. You will understand soon enough, human. Your species has been identified as a clear and present danger to galactic peace. The Council is taking necessary precautions. The screen went dark. Elena turned to her communications officer. Get me the Colonial Authority, Priority 1. Then start pulling everything you can find about recent Council activity near human space. Over the next 6 hours, the picture became clearer and more terrifying. Council fleets had been mobilizing for weeks, moving into positions around every major human settlement. Trade routes were being quietly blocked. Diplomatic channels that had been open for decades were suddenly going unanswered. And everywhere the same whispered word, the Oracle. Elena finally managed to reach Governor Chen on the colony world of New Brasilia. The old woman's face filled the screen, her expression grave. Captain Vasquez, Chen said, I'm glad you're safe. Things are getting worse by the hour. What's happening, Governor? Why does the Council think we're a threat? Chen sighed. 3 days ago, the seers of Valadon gave a prophecy to the Council. They predicted a race of fire that would bring war to the galaxy. The Oracle specifically named humanity. Elena felt the floor drop out from under her. That's insane. We've been at peace for 70 years. We walked away from all of that. I know, Chen said, and I've told them that. Our diplomats have told them that. We've opened our worlds for inspection, shared our industrial data, offered every possible proof that we're not planning anything. But they don't believe us. They think our peace is a lie. They think we're preparing for something. Through fire, humanity walked back into the war, Elena whispered, remembering the seer's words. They think we're going to attack them. And the more we try to prove we're peaceful, Chen said quietly, the more suspicious they become. It's a trap, Elena. A prophecy that creates its own truth. Elena looked around her bridge at her young crew. They had never known war. They had grown up in a humanity that built things instead of destroying them. A humanity that chose a different path. What do we do? She asked. For now, nothing, Chen said. We stay calm, we cooperate, we prove them wrong by being exactly what we are, peaceful, patient, rational. But in her heart, Elena wondered how long patience would last when you were surrounded by people who believed you were a monster and who had the guns to act on that belief. The Magellan's engines powered down, and they waited in the darkness while the Council fleet watched them like a predator watching prey. The Oracle had spoken, and the galaxy would never be the same. The blockade tightened like a noose around humanity's worlds. Every day brought new restrictions, new suspicions, new fears. Council ships now monitored every human vessel that left orbit. Cargo manifests were inspected 3 times. Passenger lists were scrutinized. Even simple messages between colonies were intercepted and analyzed. Captain Elena Vasquez stood in the observation deck of the human diplomatic station, watching Council vessels patrol outside. 3 months had passed since the Oracle's prophecy, and the situation had only gotten worse. They intercepted another data packet this morning, Ambassador Williams said from behind her. The old man looked exhausted. He had spent the last 90 days in constant negotiations, trying to convince the Council that humanity meant no harm. Do you know what made them suspicious this time? Elena turned. What? A technical manual. Instructions for maintaining fusion reactors on colony ships. Williams laughed, but there was no humor in it. They think it's coded instructions for weapons development. Because apparently, humanity is the only species that keeps maintenance records. Elena shook her head. This is madness. It gets worse, Williams said. He pulled up a holographic display. Yesterday, the Council Science Committee reviewed our historical archives. the ones we gave them voluntarily, to prove we're being transparent. They found records of Earth's wars, World War II, Vietnam, the resource conflicts. Those wars ended centuries ago, Elena said. We gave them that information to show how far we've come, how much we've changed. They don't see it that way. They see a species with a documented history of violence that spans thousands of years. They see weapons development that continued even during peacetime. They see a culture that writes songs and stories about war, that teaches military history to children, that remembers its soldiers. Williams pulled up another image. It was a photograph from a museum on Earth, showing an old military uniform behind glass. This is what scares them, Elena. Not what we're doing now, what we were, what they think we still are, hiding under a thin layer of civilization. Elena wanted to argue, but she understood. Humanity had been violent, terribly, efficiently violent. Earth's history was written in blood and ash. For thousands of years, humans had fought each other with everything from rocks to nuclear weapons. Even when they finally reached the stars, they had brought their wars with them. That's what the Treaty of Elysium was supposed to end. 70 years ago, after the colonial wars nearly destroyed human civilization, Earth and all its colonies had agreed, no more. They would disarm, rebuild, and choose peace. And they had. For 3 generations, humanity had kept that promise. But the Council didn't see the promise. They only saw the history. Admiral Kresh is making his move, Williams said quietly. He's been arguing for a preemptive strike since the beginning. Now he's got support from 12 Council members. They call it defensive action. Against what? We haven't done anything. We exist, Williams said. That's enough for them. The Oracle said we'd bring war, so our very presence is a threat. Elena felt anger burning in her chest. She forced it down. Anger wouldn't help. Not yet. What are Chancellor Mivan and the moderates saying? They're trying to hold the line. They think diplomacy can still work. But they're losing ground every day. Williams looked at Elena directly. The question is, how long can we keep our own people calm? You've seen the protests on New Brasilia. People are scared. And when people get scared, they get angry. Elena had seen the protests. She'd seen the old veterans standing in crowds, their faces hard with memories of wars they'd tried to forget. She'd heard the young people shouting that humanity needed to defend itself. She'd watched the peaceful civilization her generation had built start to crack under the pressure of the Council's suspicion. We have to keep trying, Elena said. We have to prove them wrong. 2 weeks later, everything changed. The transport ship Harmony was carrying 600 passengers from New Brasilia to the colony at Frontier Station. Families, mostly. Children going to visit grandparents. Workers rotating to new assignments. The kind of routine flight that happened 100 times a day across human space. The Council patrol ship that intercepted them was nervous. Its commander had heard too many rumors about human treachery. When the Harmony didn't respond to the first hail immediately because of a communications glitch, the patrol commander assumed the worst. He opened fire. The Harmony had no shields, no weapons, no defenses. It was a civilian transport. The Council's plasma cannons tore through its hull like paper. 300 people died in the first 30 seconds. The rest died slowly as the ship's atmosphere vented into space. By the time the Council patrol realized its mistake, there were no survivors. News of the massacre spread across human space in hours. Elena watched the footage in horrified silence. She saw the Harmony breaking apart. She saw debris and bodies floating in the dark. She saw the Council patrol ship turning and fleeing. 300 innocent people. Gone. The reaction was immediate and volcanic. Every human world erupted in rage. Protesters stormed government buildings demanding action. The pacifist politicians who had preached patience for months found themselves shouted down by crowds screaming for justice. And in the shadows, Old soldiers began to gather. Elena received a message from her father 3 days after the massacre. She hadn't spoken to him in 5 years. He had been a colonel in the colonial wars, one of the last conflicts before the Treaty of Elysium. He had killed people, seen friends die, and come home broken. He had spent the last 40 years trying to forget. His face on the screen looked older, harder. "Elena," he said, "I know what you're going to say, that we need to stay calm, that violence isn't the answer, that we're better than this." "Dad, please!" "They murdered 300 of us," he continued, "while we sat quietly, trying to prove we're not dangerous, while we opened our worlds and shared our secrets and begged them to believe we mean no harm. They murdered children, Elena." Elena saw tears in his eyes, tears and something else, something she remembered from old photographs of him in uniform. "The government wants peace," her father said. "The diplomats want peace. You want peace, and I respect that. But peace requires 2 sides. If one side is willing to kill unarmed civilians, then it's not peace, it's just waiting to die." "What are you saying?" "Groups are forming, veterans mostly, engineers. People who remember how things used to work. The government doesn't know about us yet, or they're pretending not to. But we're preparing, Elena, just in case." "Dad, you can't." "I can," he said firmly. "I won't start a war. None of us will. But if the Council forces our hand, humanity will not go quietly into the dark. Not again. Never again." The transmission ended. Elena sat in silence for a long time. Outside her window, she could see a Council warship passing by, its weapons clearly visible against its hull. Ambassador Williams was right. The question wasn't whether humanity could stay peaceful. The question was how long they could maintain peace while being treated as an enemy. Admiral Kresh addressed the Council 3 days later. His speech was broadcast across the galaxy. "The humans claim to be peaceful," he said, "but look at their response to a tragic accident. Riots, protests, military organization. This is the face of the race of fire the Oracle warned us about. They cannot hide their nature. We must act now, before it's too late." Chancellor Mivon tried to counter him. "We killed their people," he said. "Hundreds of innocent civilians. Their anger is justified. It does not mean they will attack." But the Council was afraid. And fear, Elena was learning, was more dangerous than any weapon. The Oracle had predicted fire, and both sides were gathering kindling. Admiral Kresh didn't wait for Council approval. He decided that humanity was too dangerous to let live, and he had enough ships loyal to him to do something about it. In the dark hours before dawn on New Brasilia, his fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel and began their attack. The colony had 40 million people, farmers, teachers, children, artists, people living normal lives. They had no military fleet, no defense stations, no weapons designed to fight warships. New Brasilia was exactly what humanity claimed to be: peaceful. Admiral Kresh expected the battle to last hours. He was wrong. The first warning came when his lead destroyers entered orbit. The colonists had been watching the Council's movements for months, and they weren't completely unprepared. Mining explosives, intended for asteroid work, detonated in calculated patterns. 3 destroyers took damage. 1 lost its main engines. "They're fighting back," Kresh's tactical officer reported, sounding surprised. "Of course they are," Kresh said. "This is what the Oracle warned us about. Destroy them." But it wasn't that simple. The colonists used everything they had. Cargo ships, loaded with ore and accelerated to ramming speed, crashed into Council vessels. Mining lasers, designed to cut rock, focused their beams on ship hulls. Fusion reactors were overloaded and turned into bombs. The attacks were desperate, improvised, and surprisingly effective, not because they were sophisticated, but because they were unexpected. The Council had prepared to fight a military force. They hadn't expected civilians to fight like cornered animals. Elena watched the battle from her ship, which was locked down in a council checkpoint 3 systems away. The broadcasts from New Brasilia were sporadic, interrupted by weapons fire and electromagnetic interference, but what she saw made her heart break and her blood boil at the same time. She saw a cargo pilot named Marcus Chen deliberately ram his ship into a council cruiser. His last words were broadcast across every frequency. "For the harmony, for our children, you wanted fire. Here it is." She saw a grandmother organizing children into shelters while coordinating mining drone attacks on council landing parties. She saw teenage students using chemistry knowledge to create explosives in their school labs. She saw humanity doing what it had always done when pushed to the wall, fighting back with everything it had. The battle lasted 3 days, 3 days of desperate resistance that should have been over in 3 hours. When the orbital bombardment finally stopped, New Brasilia was in ruins. 7 million people were dead. The infrastructure was destroyed. The farms were burning. But Admiral Kresch's fleet had lost 23 ships and thousands of soldiers. The victory had cost him far more than he expected, and the colonists had broadcast everything. Every attack, every war crime, every moment of civilian resistance against an unprovoked assault. The truth spread across the galaxy faster than Kresch could suppress it. Elena received new orders 2 hours after the bombardment ended. She was promoted to Commodore and given command of what was being called the Defensive Fleet. It was a generous name for what was really a collection of retrofitted cargo ships and old survey vessels, but it was all humanity had. She stood before the United Human Assembly, broadcast to every surviving colony. The chamber was packed with representatives, and every one of them looked at her with the same expression, determination mixed with grief. 3 generations ago, Elena began, her voice steady despite the emotions churning inside her. Our ancestors fought a terrible war. The colonial wars nearly destroyed us. We lost billions of people. We created weapons that made planets uninhabitable. We became monsters. She paused, looking at the faces watching her. When it ended, we made a choice. We said, never again. We disarmed. We rebuilt. We chose peace, not because we were weak, but because we were strong enough to change. For 70 years, we kept that promise. The Council doesn't believe in our peace, she continued. They believe in the Oracle's prophecy. They believe we're a race of fire, destined to bring war. And you know what? They were wrong. We didn't bring war. We didn't start this. We tried everything to avoid it. Elena's voice grew harder. But they've mistaken our peace for weakness. They've mistaken our silence for surrender. They murdered 300 civilians on the Harmony. They slaughtered 7 million on New Brasilia. They've declared war on us through their actions, even if not through their words. She could see tears on some faces, anger on others. But mostly, she saw recognition of what was coming next. The Oracle predicted a race of fire would come to war, Elena said. They were right, but they started the blaze themselves. Humanity didn't want this war. We fought for 70 years to avoid it. But now that it's here, now that they've forced our hand, we will show them exactly what the Oracle saw. She took a deep breath. Not because we want to. Not because we're proud of it, but because we have no other choice. The Council thinks we're dangerous? Let's show them what dangerous really means. Let's show them what happens when you back humanity into a corner. The chamber erupted in a standing ovation. But Elena didn't feel victorious. She felt sick, because she knew what was coming. She had studied the history. She knew what humanity was capable of when it stopped holding back. All across human space, the transformation began. Shipyards that built colony vessels started producing warships. Scientists who had spent careers developing better farming techniques turned their minds to weapons. Veterans came out of retirement, their old skills suddenly valuable again. It happened fast, faster than the Council expected, because humanity hadn't forgotten how to make war. They had just chosen not to, and that choice could be unmade. Elena's father sent her another message. "I'm sorry you have to see this," he said. "I'm sorry we couldn't give you a world where you'd never need to learn these things. But I'm proud of you. We all are. You're giving humanity a chance to survive." She deleted the message without responding. She didn't want his pride. She didn't want any of this. But she was a soldier now, whether she wanted to be or not. The Council watched humanity's militarization with growing horror. Chancellor Mivon sent desperate peace offers, but they went unanswered. The time for peace had been before the Harmony, before New Brasilia. Now, it was too late. "The Oracle's prophecy is fulfilling itself," one council member said during an emergency session. "We created the very monster we feared." "No," Admiral Kresh insisted, his voice hard. "The monster was always there. We simply forced it to show its true face. Now we must finish what we started, or they will destroy us all." The council split down the middle. Some species withdrew entirely, wanting no part of the war. Others joined Kresh, too committed or too afraid to back down. The galaxy that had been united for centuries fractured along fault lines that nobody had known existed. And in the center of it all, humanity prepared for war. Not because they wanted revenge, though many did. Not because they enjoyed violence, though some discovered they did. But because the alternative was extinction. Elena looked at the star charts showing council and human positions. She remembered the young survey captain she had been just months ago. Bored and safe and content. That person felt like a stranger now. "They wanted a race of fire," she said to her empty quarters. "We'll give them exactly what they asked for." Outside her window, the newly built warships of humanity's fleet gathered in the dark. They weren't as sophisticated as council ships. They weren't as large or as powerful. But they were crewed by people who had nothing left to lose. The Oracle had predicted fire. Now, both sides would burn. The war didn't go the way the Council expected. They had thousands of years of military tradition, established doctrines, and proper tactics. Humanity had desperation, creativity, and a history of fighting itself with terrifying efficiency. The first major battle happened at the Kepler mining fields. A council fleet of 80 ships moved to secure the asteroid belt, expecting standard defensive positions. Instead, they found the entire asteroid field had been turned into a weapon. Humans had strapped engines to dozens of massive rocks and turned them into kinetic missiles. When the Council fleet arrived, they were bombarded by millions of tons of stone and metal moving at incredible speeds. 20 Council ships were destroyed in the first 15 minutes. The rest retreated in confusion. "They weaponized asteroids," the Council tactical report said. "No established military doctrine accounts for this approach." That became the pattern. While the Council fought by the rules, humanity made up new ones. They attacked supply lines instead of fleets. They used suicide runs that other species found horrific. They set traps, used psychological warfare, and fought dirty in every way possible. But what truly shocked the galaxy was humanity's willingness to endure losses. Most species surrendered when casualties reached 10 or 15%. Their cultures couldn't accept higher losses. Humanity kept fighting until there was nothing left to fight with. Commodore Elena Vasquez led the human fleet from the bridge of the newly built warship Defiance. It wasn't much of a warship by Council standards, but it was fast and carried enough missiles to hurt anything it could catch. Her crew was young, undertrained, and absolutely committed. "Council fleet detected," Lieutenant Park called from sensors. He had been with Elena since the survey ship days. That felt like a lifetime ago. 40 ships moving to intercept Frontier Station. Frontier Station had 8 million people. It also had one of the largest shipyards in human space. If the Council took it, they could cut off humanity's ability to build new vessels. How many ships do we have in range? Elena asked. 15, ma'am. But 5 of them are cargo ships with improvised weapons. 15 against 40. Bad odds, even for humans. But that's what they had. Send the word, Elena said. We're engaging. Tell them to follow attack pattern Alamo. The Alamo pattern was named after an ancient Earth battle where defenders held a position against overwhelming odds. They lost, but they took enough enemies with them to matter. That's what humanity had become. A species that measured victory and how much damage they could do before dying. The battle was brutal. Human ships darted in and out, firing missiles and retreating before the Council could lock weapons. They used the station itself for cover, forcing the Council to risk hitting civilian structures. When Council ships got too close, human crews rammed them. Elena watched a cargo ship called the Promise of Dawn, loaded with explosives, crash directly into a Council battlecruiser. Both ships exploded in a ball of fire that lit up her screens. 60 people died on the Promise, 2,000 on the battlecruiser. The Dawn is gone, Park reported quietly. Elena closed her eyes for just a moment. The captain of that ship had been her friend, a woman named Sarah who loved bad jokes and had 3 children. She had volunteered for the suicide run without hesitation. Mark their sacrifice, Elena said, and keep firing. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, Frontier Station was damaged but intact. The Council fleet had retreated. Humanity had lost 8 ships. The Council lost 19. It was a victory. It felt like dying. Back on Earth, the reports came in from battles across human space. Humanity was winning some, losing others, but always making the Council pay a terrible price. The war was spreading, consuming resources and lives at an alarming rate. Elena's father sent her a message after the Frontier Station battle. You did good, Elena. You saved 8 million people. I killed hundreds to do it, she replied, on both sides. That's war, he said. It's not supposed to feel good. It's supposed to feel necessary. But Elena wondered if anything could really be necessary, when it required turning cargo ships into bombs and watching your friends die for a few more hours of survival. The real turning point came when Elena proposed something radical to the human command. We can't win by fighting the Council's way, she said during a strategy session. We're outgunned, outproduced, and outnumbered, but we have one advantage. They think they understand us. They think we're trying to win through military victory. Aren't we? General Morrison asked. He was old guard military, one of the Colonial War veterans. No, Elena said. We're trying to survive. That means changing the game. We need to go after their communications network, not their ships, their ability to coordinate. She pulled up a map showing Council space. If we can get enough human ships into their core systems and start broadcasting the truth about how this war started, we can split their alliance. Most Council species don't want this war. They're fighting because Admiral Kresh convinced them we're monsters. Let's show them what really happened. It was risky. It meant sending precious ships deep into enemy territory on what was essentially a propaganda mission. If it failed, those ships would be lost for nothing. Do it, General Morrison said. Because you're right. We can't win a straight fight, but we can win the truth. Elena led the mission herself. 12 ships moving fast through Council space, dodging patrols and defense networks. They carried every recording of the Harmony's destruction, every piece of evidence about New Brasilia, and hours of footage showing human civilians just trying to live their lives. They broke into Council communications networks and broadcast it all. Every major planet, every news network, every public channel. The truth, raw and undeniable. The response was immediate and chaotic. On the Council worlds, people watched in horror as they saw what had really happened. They saw Admiral Kresh ordering the attack on New Brasilia. They saw human children dying under orbital bombardment. They saw a species that had been peaceful until violence was forced upon them. Public opinion across the galaxy started to shift. Protests erupted on council worlds. Several species withdrew their ships from the war effort. Chancellor Myvan, seeing his chance, called for an immediate ceasefire and peace talks. But Admiral Kresh refused. He commanded loyalist forces from dozens of species who were too committed to back down. The council split completely, with some species trying to make peace while others escalated the fighting. "They're turning on each other," Park reported from the Defiance's sensor station. 5 council species just withdrew from Kresh's alliance. "Good," Elena said. But she didn't feel good. She felt exhausted. They had been fighting for 8 months. She had lost friends, made terrible choices, and watched humanity transform back into the warriors they had tried so hard to stop being. Worse, she had discovered something disturbing about herself and her species. They were good at this. Too good. War came naturally to humans in a way it didn't for other species. The peaceful civilization they had built after the Treaty of Elysium had been a choice, and not an easy one. The warrior underneath had never really gone away. It had just been sleeping. Some humans embraced it. She saw young soldiers laughing after successful battles, veterans finding purpose they hadn't felt in decades. Scientists excited by the challenge of creating new weapons. It terrified her because she understood it. Part of her felt more alive in this war than she ever had in peace. "Ma'am, we're receiving a transmission from Chancellor Myvan," the communications officer said. "He wants to talk." Elena looked at the star charts showing the positions of human and council forces. So much death. So much waste. All because of a prophecy that might not have even been real. "Put him through," she said. Maybe it was time to see if the war could end. Or maybe it was too late, and everyone would just keep burning until there was nothing left. The Oracle had said humanity would walk through fire. It hadn't mentioned whether they would come out the other side. The Nexus was the heart of the Galactic Council. A massive space station where 100 species had gathered for 1,000 years to discuss peace, trade, and cooperation. Now it was surrounded by warships from both sides, and Commodore Elena Vasquez was about to attack it. Her fleet was battered. 53 ships, many of them damaged, all of them running on fumes and determination. They faced Admiral Kresh's loyalist force of nearly 200 vessels protecting the Nexus. It should have been suicide. "This is insane," Lieutenant Park said quietly from his station. "Even for us, this is insane." Elena understood his fear, but she also understood something else. This battle would decide everything. If Kresh held the Nexus, the moderate council members couldn't negotiate peace. The war would continue until one side was completely destroyed, and humanity, for all its ferocity, couldn't survive that kind of war. "All ships, this is Commodore Vasquez," she broadcast to the fleet. "Today we fight for the last time, not for revenge, not for victory, but for the chance at peace, for the chance to prove that the Oracle was wrong about us." She paused, looking at her crew. They were so young, so tired. "If we fail today, humanity dies. But if we succeed, maybe we can build something better. Maybe we can show the galaxy what we really are. Let's go." The fleet moved forward. Kresh's ships opened fire immediately. Space lit up with weapons fire, missiles, and explosions. Human ships weaved through the barrage, using every trick they had learned in months of desperate combat. Elena's tactical officer, a veteran named Commander Jackson, coordinated the attack. "Alpha Wing, hit their right flank. Bravo Wing, draw their fire. Charlie Wing, prepare for the breakthrough run." The breakthrough run. That was the real plan. While most of the fleet kept Kresh's forces busy, a small group of ships would punch through to the Nexus itself, not to destroy it, but to do something much more important. "Ma'am, we're taking heavy casualties," Park reported. 7 ships down. No, 8. Elena gripped her chair's armrests. She was sending people to die. Again. Always again. Keep going. We're almost there. A Council battleship exploded to their left, hit by a swarm of human missiles. A human destroyer to their right broke apart under plasma fire. The battle was chaos, violence, and death on a scale that made Elena's stomach turn. But they were getting closer to the Nexus. "Charlie Wing, go now," Jackson ordered. 12 ships broke from the main battle and raced toward the station. Council ships tried to intercept them, but the rest of the human fleet threw themselves into blocking positions. Elena watched 3 cargo ships, converted into makeshift warships, ram Council vessels to clear the path. Hundreds of people died in seconds to buy a few minutes. The lead ship of Charlie Wing reached the Nexus and attached to its hull. Marines poured out, fighting their way to the communication center. The goal wasn't to conquer the station. It was to broadcast one final message. Back at Earth's research station, human scientists had spent the last 2 months doing something unprecedented. They had studied every oracle prophecy in recorded history, analyzed the seer's language patterns, and made a discovery that changed everything. The prophecy about humanity was incomplete. The Council had only heard part of it. Elena's communications officer received the signal from Charlie Wing. "They've reached the broadcast center, ma'am, ready to transmit on your order." This was it, the moment everything hinged on. "Send it," Elena commanded. "All frequencies, maximum power. Make sure everyone hears this." The transmission went out across the entire galaxy. It showed the original Oracle's prophecy, the complete version that the seers had spoken, but the Council had not fully understood. Human scientists explained their analysis, showed their work, and revealed the truth. The Oracle predicted a race of fire. Through fire, humanity walked back into the war, and through fire, they will forge a lasting peace. The prophecy had never been about humanity destroying the galaxy. It was about humanity being forced back into war, enduring it, and having the strength to end it properly. Not through domination, not through revenge, but by proving that continued war was unwinnable for anyone. Elena's voice came through the broadcast, speaking to the entire galaxy. "We are the race of fire, not because we love violence, but because we understand it. We know war better than any species in this galaxy because we've been doing it to ourselves for thousands of years. We know its costs. We know its horrors. We know that nobody really wins." She paused, looking directly into the camera. "The Council feared us because of the Oracle's warning. They attacked us because of that fear. They forced us back into the war we had spent 70 years trying to leave behind. And we fought. We fought hard. We showed you exactly what the Oracle predicted, a race that walks through fire. But the prophecy had more to say. Through that fire we would forge peace, not by destroying our enemies, but by making them understand what we've always known. War is hell, and the only way to win is not to play." Elena transmitted her terms across all channels. Admiral Kresh and his conspirators would face trial for war crimes. The Council would acknowledge its unprovoked aggression against humanity and pay reparations for the millions killed. Humanity would gain full representation in galactic governance, with veto power over military actions. In exchange, humanity would do something unprecedented. They would share every weapon technology they had developed during the war, every tactic, every strategy, and then, with Council observers watching, they would destroy their entire military arsenal. "We'll show you how we fight," Elena said, "and then we'll show you that we're willing to stop, that we're not the monsters you feared. We're just people who want to live in peace. But if you force us to fight, we'll show you why the Oracle called us a race of fire." Chancellor Mivon's response came within an hour. He accepted the terms immediately. He had been trying to end this war from the beginning, and now he finally had the leverage to do it. But Admiral Kresh refused. From his flagship, he broadcast his own message. "The humans are lying. This is a trick. We must finish them now, or they will destroy us all." He ordered his remaining forces to continue the attack. But something had changed. His own officers, exhausted and horrified by the bloodshed, hesitated. They had watched the full prophecy. They had heard Elena's words. They had lost friends and colleagues in a war that might have been avoided. Kresh's second-in-command, a Valorian captain named Shekra, made a decision that would echo through history. She arrested Admiral Kresh on his own bridge. "The war is over, Admiral," she said as security forces took him away. "You started it with fear and lies, but we're ending it with truth." The remaining loyalist forces stood down. The battle stopped, and for the first time in 10 months, the shooting stopped across the galaxy. Elena stood on the bridge of the Defiance, surrounded by her crew, and felt something she hadn't felt in what seemed like forever: hope. Not victory, not triumph, just hope that maybe, finally, it was over. The peace process took months. Admiral Kresh and 17 other council members were tried and convicted of war crimes. The council paid massive reparations to human worlds. Humanity gained representation in galactic governance, and true to their word, humans shared every weapon they had developed, then destroyed their entire military fleet in a ceremony broadcast across the galaxy. Other species did the same, supervised by an international disarmament committee. Elena, now Ambassador Vasquez, stood at the new Galactic Assembly during its first session. Human colonies were rebuilding, but the scars would last for generations. New Brasilia would take decades to recover. The survivors of the war carried wounds both physical and psychological that would never fully heal. She thought about all the people who had died, the Harmony's passengers, the millions on New Brasilia, her friend Sarah on the Promise of Dawn, so many others whose names she would never know. "Was it worth it?" Lieutenant Park asked her one day as they watched Earth from the observation deck. He was a civilian now, working as a translator for the assembly. Elena considered the question. "No," she said finally. "War is never worth it. But sometimes it's necessary. We didn't want this. We tried everything to avoid it. But when we had no choice, we showed them what the Oracle really meant." "What did it mean?" Park asked. Elena smiled sadly. "That the capacity for violence doesn't define you. Your choices do. We walked through fire not because we loved it, but because sometimes that's the only path to the other side. We're the race of fire, because we understand war well enough to choose peace." She looked out at the stars, thinking about humanity's long, bloody history, from Earth's ancient wars to the colonial conflicts to this latest tragedy. So much violence, so much death, but also always the choice to do better. "The Oracle predicted we would bring war," Elena said. "And we did, but not the way they expected. We brought the war that ends wars, the one that shows everyone why peace matters. Because we've been fighting for thousands of years, and we know something that species with only centuries of history don't understand. War never ends through victory. It ends when everyone decides they've had enough." Park was quiet for a moment. "Do you think we really changed anything?" Elena thought about the disarmament treaties, the new council structure, the species learning to trust each other again. It was fragile. It could fall apart. But it was something. "I don't know," she admitted. "Maybe in a few generations they'll forget. Maybe we'll have to learn these lessons all over again. But for now, for today, we have peace. And that's enough." She touched the window, looking at Earth below. Humanity had walked through fire once again. They had proven the Oracle right in ways nobody expected. They were the race of fire, not because they were made of violence, but because they could endure it, understand it, and still choose something better on the other side. The Oracle's prophecy was complete. Through fire, humanity had walked back into the war, and through fire, they had forged a lasting peace. Or at least, they would try. And for a species that had spent thousands of years fighting itself, Trying was a kind of victory all its own.